But it's been reported that Prime Minister Netanyahu's security detail was caught twice by Secret Service attaching some kind of device to the president's Secret Service emergency response vehicle. I don't know if that's true. Have you heard that?
I've read it in the media. I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
I think the president and the vice president and several members of the cabinet going out to dinner in D.C. and the Code Pink protesters having a heads up about that to rent the table. And that's hard to do. They had to figure out where they rent the table. They had to kind of get the restaurant on board to a certain extent. To me, that's kind of almost like counting coup. It's a soft flex. It's a I can touch you whenever I want. It was Code Pink. They weren't going to do anything. We know they're just going to be kind of crazy and annoying. However, what does that mean? That means you've got real problems with your security detail. And then, a few weeks later, you have an armed police officer who's off duty, who's not part of the president's detail, come right up and shake the president's hand. And the guy's probably patriotic American, whatever. He probably just wanted to shake the president's hand legitimately. But that got a lot of publicity. And what does that mean? And the president, again, President Trump is very smart. I think President Trump has a gift for interpreting large sets of data.
Yes.
And making very, very key strategic decisions. And so when the president sees that he's got issues with his own security detail, when he sees what happened in Butler with the other assassination attempts, when he sees what happened with Charlie, I think it's reasonable to believe that somewhere in his head he thinks that, maybe I don't have a choice. Maybe they could harm me or they could harm my family. And if they can't keep me safe, I believe the president deeply cares. I believe he's very courageous. I think if it was just a matter of he worried about his own physical safety, I don't think he cares. We saw that in Butler. But he does love his family, and he's got a big family. And so somewhere in his head, if they can't keep me safe, what about my family? So look, maybe the president was just simply deceived by the echo chamber we described, and that's how we got to this place. But it's also, there's a potential that there's an element of coercion, intimidation, whatever words you want to use there, that is also influencing his decision-making.
If you were assessing a similar situation in another country, a country not your own, and you as an expert on these questions, which obviously you are, I gave you the same data set you've just presented to me. And I said, would you say that's just crazy even to bring that up as a possibility?
Not at all. I mean, when you map out those data points, I would just say this moves from being a possibility to potentially, depending on how you look at it and interpret it, this could be a likelihood. It would be something that I'm sure that we would debate rigorously, but nobody would dismiss it altogether. With all this data, it's not nothing. It's something that has to be looked into.
Is it being looked into?
Again, I don't think it is. I think that with Butler, your investigative journalist found more about crooks than the entire government. And the
response I received from the FBI was so hostile that it confused me, and it still does confuse me. A lot. It confuses me a lot since I didn't approach the question with anything like that in mind. I mean, we put this documentary out. We got information, the information you described. We got a lot of his online activity, which we've been told didn't exist. And this was not an attack on the FBI. This was, of course, during the last administration with a different director. So this was hardly a partisan hit job. This is the president of the United States, who I campaigned for and voted for and have liked for many years. So it's not an attack.
Mm-hmm.
And the response that I got was hysterical.
Yep.
That's not an overstatement.
Yep.
And it confuses me.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences like that?
There was a level of, just hostility coming from really the FBI. And some of it, I think, is just like rivalry. Like, why are you looking over my shoulder? I got this. I'm very familiar with that. I mean, we're the same way in the military, so I got it.
I'm sure that's right.
I totally get that.
They were treated like you were in the Air Force kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, what do you know? Like, we're the FBI. Like, gotcha. But, we had a role to play, and the way that we were aggressively blocked from that, I found the hostility to be above and beyond what you would think that you'd find with just typical, rivalry, bureaucratic rivalry, turf wars, those types of things. Some of that was at play, but the level of you cannot look at this, and then for them to escalate it, to attempt to get us kicked out of the case, That to me was very surprising. Same thing with Butler. When we first started asking questions about Butler, I thought, because especially that happened under the Biden administration, that, hey, we would come in and we would get the truth because, the previous administration really screwed this thing up. And there just wasn't curiosity there. There wasn't curiosity, and there wasn't a tolerance whatsoever for us going after just the key questions of like, hey, did the informant that you had that was interacting with this guy, Rashant, was he in communication with anybody in Butler? I mean, basic questions to ask. Again, this is nothing that's going to blow any investigator's socks off. Just those basic questions. Like, no, the two aren't related. Like, you can't talk about it. You can't ask any of those questions. Even when we found data
Actually?
that needed to be looked in. Yeah, I mean, they would say at the time, like, well, the Merchant case is ongoing, et cetera. Like, we can't interfere if that case is over. So, I mean, at this point,
I don't understand. I think this is like a new rule.
Yeah.
Which is to say a fake rule that you're not allowed to gather information about anything that might potentially intersect with an ongoing case that's not directly related. Like who made that up?
I think that's just made up. I don't, because then how do you ever investigate anything?
What law school did you go to? Right. And I asked this question and it was like, yeah, cases have been overturned on this basis. And it's like, well, cases have been overturned on many bases, but
right.
How is that? Is this like the new standard? Because you would not be able to investigate anything.
Right, exactly. And we want to get to the truth. And
so what is that for those of us following along at home who don't have a high level of familiarity with the process? What could that possibly be? The current president was the subject of a near successful assassination attempt like recently.
Yeah.
And we're just not going to look into very obvious leads or divulge information that everyone knows they have. For example, the surveillance tape from the shooting range at which Thomas Crooks trained, because it would answer the question, was he training with somebody? And if so, who? They have that footage and they won't release it. What could possibly be the explanation for that?
I know what the result is. The result is people come to their own conclusions, and this is where like crazy conspiracy theories come from. And then those conspiracy theories usually are easy to debunk or make the people saying them sound crazy. So then the actual question never gets answered.
Right? I'm sorry. Can you say that for people who haven't lived in Washington? Okay, I try to explain this to people all the time because this has been ongoing since at least the Kennedy assassination. But this is a very serious and reoccurring thing. It's a tactic. And you just explained it better than anyone I've ever heard. Can you just do that again if you can recall it from memory?
Yeah, I mean, so basically you give no information whatsoever on something that's obvious that there should be information. Like you outlined, like there's potentially footage of Crooks at the shooting range. Again, Police 101, go get the tapes. Let's figure it out. If you don't want to address that question, then you go silent on it and you say, you can't ask that question, which then creates people who come out of kind of nowhere and they start drawing their own conclusions.
Right.
Knowing the way the internet works, I mean, half of them, if not more, are probably going to be so far off in left field and made by legitimate kooks or bots that then you can just be like, oh, these people asking these questions about that tape at the video range.
It's space aliens.
All crazy conspiracy theorists. They say it's a UAP or whatever. And so then you've just, diverted all attention away from the thing that you're trying to conceal, and now everyone's focused on the crazies.
Man.
And then the second someone asks a legitimate question, they're crazy.
I hope everyone watching will just clip that tape and keep it on your phone and replay it every day, because that is one of the primary ways that the intel agencies and federal law enforcement influence public opinion, influence elections. That's the way they influence the perception of what's going on. But more than anything, it's the way that they hide their own behavior from the public.
Yeah.